So, who am I and how do I know what I'm talking about? My name is Judith Jolma. I have been in the homeschool world for more than 35 years. Well, that's because I grew up being homeschooled. I was homeschooled K through 12, and now I homeschool my own 4 children. This means that when I talk about homeschooling, I'm talking about it from both the parent's perspective and the child's perspective. Because having grown up being homeschooled, I have that advantage of being able to answer your questions about what will my children think about this when they're grown? Will it really be the best thing for them? And what mistakes can I avoid that my children will be sure to tell me about later? I'm a journalist. I cut my teeth in the newsroom of the Washington Times and was personally mentored by Marvin Olasky of World Magazine. I am a contributing editor to children's publications. I'm a public speaker, entrepreneur, and life coach. I love being able to teach women how to rise above depletion so they can give to their families from a life of wholeness. But of course, my heart lies in homeschooling my own family and showing other families how to be successful in that. And not only am I a homeschool consultant with Sophia Homeschool, but I've also worked in the same capacity for the Institute for Excellence in Writing, working closely with Andrew Pudwa all along the way. But figuring out how to take control of my child's education, create a peaceful home life while not giving up all those things that I love, well, it was not easy. And it took a great deal of trial and error. And it often felt like I was all alone as I struggled through finding that balance. My mother began homeschooling in 1983. I was in kindergarten, and she never turned back. And even as a child, I was thankful to be home learning at my pace. And to my mother's credit, thanks to her wisdom and example she set, all her grandchildren are now homeschooled. So it wasn't just I who was thankful for what my mother gave to us in homeschooling. All of my siblings, and there were 7 of us total, we all feel the same way, that this is a gift that we want to give to our own children. And to be fair, my mom did a lot right, but she also, well, she didn't have a guide or a coach, and so she made a lot of mistakes too. And as a child, as children tend to be, I was very critical of my mother's techniques while growing up. I always believed that I would homeschool my own children better. You might say I was idealistic. I imagined spending the school year studying an era in history and then the whole summer traveling to the places that we studied. I imagined studying Latin and Greek with my brilliant and perfectly obedient, beautiful children who would all play musical instruments, and the house would just be full of harmony and joy at all times. But then, of course, I had children. And I didn't just have children, I had 4 children in a 5-year span. Each pregnancy involved weeks of bed rest and a C-section, and we moved in between each one and filed bankruptcy. So life was very, very, very turbulent during those first about 8 years. And we did not have a supportive church or even family nearby. And my husband, he was working 6.5 days a week. So to say that I was overwhelmed and depressed, that would be an understatement. And these years were tough. But I held on to my idealistic dreams, believing that just If I only had the right tools, I could bring it all about. So I began going to every homeschool talk and convention, everything that I could find. And I would read and listen to talks. Everything I could get my hands on, I was consuming, because even though I had grown up being homeschooled and I knew what it looked like in the home in the day-to-day life, a lot had changed since I graduated. Remember when I was homeschooled starting in 1983, there were no co-ops, and the homeschool curriculums were minimal at best. So I wanted to expose myself to what was now available. And I wanted to become a student of educational philosophy and childhood development. But despite all of this, I discovered that my husband had his doubts. His mother had expressed disapproval for homeschooling, and he was not about to lose face in front of his mother. So he would not support me in my desire to homeschool. He wanted to enroll the children in a private school. And you can imagine the blow to my confidence. My husband doubted my ability to do what I felt I was born to do. However, I was too sick. Remember, those were very turbulent pregnancies. And I really had no other choice other than to yield to my husband's wishes. It really was best for the children to be enrolled in a preschool at this time because, well, I was on bed rest. Unfortunately, though, there was a beautiful Montessori school that was nearby, and we enrolled the children. And while they were there, I became as involved as possible, learning everything I could about brain development and childhood development and learning disabilities and special needs. And these are topics that continue to fascinate me today. And because there were experts there at the school, and they were friends with other experts outside the school who became my acquaintances and mentors, it was just an immersion in everything that I wanted to know about. I became certified in Catechism of the Good Shepherd, which is the Montessori approach to spiritual development. And beyond that, one of the longtime teachers at the school, Miss Brenda, you will hear me talk about Miss Brenda quite often. She was such an inspiration and a mentor to me. Well, she was getting her infant and toddler certification, and in the Montessori method, that requires logging many hours of scientific observations of infants and toddlers. And it just so happened that my daughters were exactly the right age for her to complete her assignments. So she spent an entire summer at my house logging her observation hours, and at the same time being an in-home mentor for what it meant to manage the home, manage my tone, manage the discipline, and to give to my children everything that they needed in the developmentally appropriate way for where they were in their developmental progression. It was training that I really couldn't have. Learned this without her being there in my home. And it was because of this experience that I know that we can read all the books and learn all the theories that we want, but without a guide and an individual plan, we will continue to struggle. So not long ago, girls grew up in a community of women, mothers, aunts, neighbors, who shared the work, and they welcomed children into the work. So they learned from the earliest age, and they passed on generational knowledge about caring for children. Well, I was lucky to have Miss Brenda, because despite growing up in a good family, today we just don't have that network of women around us. But we do have plenty of critics. You know, we live in a culture steeped in comparison and criticism. We are surrounded by images of perfection and we strive for perfection when the reality is far from perfect. And this expectation is despite the fact that none of us are prepared to live in this fast-paced world without training. So I can tell you from experience that deliberate training is critical to build the skills needed to create a peaceful and fulfilling lifestyle and to manage your children's education. By the time my oldest entered second grade, however, I was finally healthy enough and my husband was willing to trust me with their education. So we pulled the children out of school and we've been homeschooling ever since. And it only took a very little while for my husband to also become a true believer in what we were doing. He saw immediately how they were thriving. So that I can honestly say that, because of the foundation, all the training about understanding the child, managing the environment, my tone, and teaching the children, teaching to their needs, it all added up to a tremendously successful homeschool experience. Despite life's twists and turns, such as seasons when I've had to work full time or not having funds for the best curriculum or music lessons, etc. Because we know how to adapt and which tools to use in which seasons, we have been able to create a family culture built on a mutual love for learning. We've been able to eliminate homework battles and fuel academic excellence, all while meeting the needs of each member of the family, including my own. We have intentionally built a family culture of mutual respect, encouragement, curiosity, and perseverance. And basically, my relationship with my children is built on a mutual love for learning. But to get here is not some kind of magic or unusual talent. I'm no superhero. I'm a mom like you. I have traveled this road ahead of you, and I can show you the way.